In the small grey brick town of Millbrook, where rain seemed to paint the streets more often than sunlight, Emily Hartwell lived a life of quiet determination. At 32, she carried the weight of her dreams and responsibilities like a carefully balanced package, always on the verge of tipping but never falling. Her tiny flat overlooked a narrow street lined with old oak trees. The wallpaper peeled slightly at the corners, and the wooden floors creaked with every step. But to Emily it was home. A home she had carved out for herself and her 8-year-old son, Thomas. Every morning began the same way. The alarm would chirp softly at 5:30, and Emily would slide out of bed, careful not to wake Thomas. Her routine was a carefully choreographed dance of survival. She'd prepare a simple breakfast, usually porridge with a sprinkle of cheap honey, toast with margarine, and a cup of tea that was more water than flavor. Thomas was a quiet boy, with his father's dark eyes and his mother's determined chin. He never complained about their simple life, understanding somehow that his mother was fighting battles he couldn't see. Each morning she would help him dress for school, iron his second-hand uniform, and pack a lunch that was modest but nutritious. Her job at the local library was more than just work. It was her lifeline. Between shelving books, helping visitors, and managing the small community reading programs, Emily found moments of joy. She loved books. They were windows to worlds she could only dream of exploring. Her colleagues respected her, not just for her hard work, but for the quiet intelligence that seemed to radiate from her. But beneath the calm surface, Emily carried a dream. She wanted to be a researcher, to write books that would matter, to show Thomas that education was the key to changing their circumstances. Her evenings were spent studying after Thomas went to bed, her small desk cluttered with books, notes, and the occasional cold cup of tea. The town of Millbrook was typical of many small English communities. Everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Some whispered about Emily, the single mother who worked 2 jobs, who seemed always tired but never defeated. Some felt sympathy, others judgment, but Emily heard none of it. Her world was small but complete. Thomas, her books, her work. Money was always tight. Her library job paid just enough to keep them fed and housed. Some months, she would skip meals to ensure Thomas had everything he needed. Her winter coat had patches. Her shoes were worn at the heels, but her spirit remained unbroken. Thomas was her greatest source of strength. He was a bright child, always reading, always curious. On weekends, they would visit the local charity shops, hunting for books and cheap treasures. These were their adventures, finding a book for 50 pence, sharing a cream bun from the local bakery, laughing about the silly titles they'd find. Her own education had been cut short years ago when she became pregnant with Thomas. University seemed like a distant dream then, something other people did, but she never let that stop her from learning. Every spare moment was an opportunity to read, to understand, to grow. The library was more than just a workplace for Emily. It was a sanctuary. Rows of books were her companions, each spine telling a story of possibility. She knew almost every book by heart, could recommend the perfect read for any visitor, and found comfort in the quiet rustle of pages. As dawn broke on this particular morning, Emily looked out the window. The street was empty, the oak trees swaying gently in the early light. Another day was beginning, full of potential and challenge. She smiled, a small, determined smile that spoke of hope and resilience. Thomas stirred in the next room. Another day of carefully balanced dreams, of quiet. Struggle of unbreakable love was about to unfold. Emily took a deep breath, ready to face whatever the day would bring. In Millbrook, where dreams often seemed as grey as the morning sky, Emily Hartwell was writing her own story, one page, one moment at a time. The rain had been falling steadily, all morning, creating a soft rhythm against the library's large windows. Emily was arranging a display of local history books when Professor Richard Williams walked in. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with silver-rimmed glasses and a tweed jacket that seemed to carry the weight of academic knowledge. At first, he moved quietly through the library, browsing the shelves with the careful attention of someone who respected books. Emily continued her work, unaware that her life was about to change. She was discussing a complex historical document with her colleague. explaining the intricate details of local mining history with such passion that her words seemed to bring the past to life. Professor Williams paused. His ears caught the depth of her knowledge, the way she spoke about history not as dry facts but as living, breathing stories. Most people would have missed the significance of her conversation, but he was different. Years of academic research had taught him to recognize genuine intelligence. When Emily finished shelving the books, the professor approached her. His voice was kind, with a slight academic formality that spoke of years in university halls. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help but overhear your discussion about local history." Emily felt a moment of panic. She was used to blending into the background, to being invisible, but something in the professor's eyes was different. There was genuine interest, not judgment. "I'm Richard Williams from the university," he continued. "Do you have a background in historical research?" She hesitated. Years of setbacks had taught her to be cautious. "Just personal interest," Emily replied, her hands nervously smoothing her worn library uniform. "I read a lot in my spare time." The conversation that followed was like a door slowly opening. Professor Williams learned about her interrupted education, her passion for local history, and her dreams of becoming a researcher. He saw something in Emily that others had missed, a sharp mind constrained by circumstances. "We're looking for a part-time research assistant," he said carefully. "Someone who understands local history, who can help with community archives. It's not a full-time position, but it might be interesting for someone like you." The offer hung in the air between them. For Emily, it was more than a job. It was a lifeline, a potential path to the dreams she had carefully tucked away. She thought of Thomas, of the opportunities this might create for both of them. Her mind raced. Part-time work would mean juggling her library job, finding childcare for Thomas, managing an entirely new set of challenges. But the spark of possibility was already burning bright in her eyes. "I would need to arrange childcare," she said slowly, "and my current job at the library." Professor Williams smiled. It was a kind smile, the kind that suggested he understood struggle. "We can work around your current commitments," he said. "The university is flexible with dedicated researchers." That evening, Emily sat at her small kitchen table, surrounded by Thomas's school drawings and her own carefully kept notebooks. The offer seemed almost too good to be true. A chance to dive deeper into the historical research she loved, to potentially create a better future for her son. Thomas looked up from his homework. "You seem happy, Mum," he said, noticing the slight change in her demeanor. "Maybe," Emily replied. "Maybe something good is about to happen." The rain continued outside, but inside their small flat, hope was beginning to take root. An unexpected opportunity had arrived, quiet but powerful, like a gentle knock on a door that had been closed for too long. Emily knew nothing was certain. Life had taught her to be cautious, to not get her hopes up too quickly. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, a future where her passion for history could become more than just a dream. In Millbrook, where dreams often seemed as grey as the winter sky, a small spark of possibility had just been lit. The first weeks of Emily's new research position were like walking a tightrope between hope and exhaustion. Mornings began before sunrise, with Thomas dropped at his grandmother's house, and evenings stretched long into the night with study and research. The university building felt like another world. Marble floors echoed with confident footsteps of established researchers, while Emily moved carefully, feeling like an outsider. Her research project focused on the forgotten stories of working-class families in Millbrook's industrial past, a subject close to her heart. Older researchers would sometimes exchange subtle glances when she spoke during meetings. Their looks suggested doubt, a silent challenge to her place in their academic world. Emily noticed these moments but refused to let them break her spirit. She knew her work was valuable, her research important. Her first major challenge came with a complex archival project. Hundreds of old documents needed careful sorting, transcribing, and analyzing. Most researchers would find this tedious, but Emily saw it as a treasure hunt. Each document told a story, revealed a fragment of forgotten history. Professor Williams became her quiet supporter. He saw her potential when others saw only her limitations. "Your perspective is different," he would tell her. "You're not just researching history, you're giving voice to those who were never heard before." Balancing work became an intricate dance. Library shifts, research hours, time with Thomas and late-night studying created a rhythm that was exhausting but exciting. Some nights, she would fall asleep at her small desk, surrounded by historical documents and Thomas's school drawings. Thomas was her greatest motivation. He watched his mother's transformation with quiet admiration. At 8 years old, he understood that something important was happening. He would help her organize papers, ask curious questions about her research, and serve as her smallest, most enthusiastic supporter. The research team was initially skeptical. Academic circles can be unforgiving, especially to someone without traditional credentials. But Emily's work began to speak for itself. Her unique approach to local history, her ability to connect personal stories with broader historical contexts, started to gain attention. One particular document changed everything. Hidden in a dusty archive, she discovered letters from working class women during the Industrial Revolution, voices that had been silent for generations. Her careful translation and analysis brought these forgotten stories to light. Challenges came in many forms. Childcare was expensive, time was limited, and self-doubt sometimes crept in during quiet moments. But Emily had learned long ago that surrender was not an option. Every obstacle was just another opportunity to prove her worth. Her research started, gaining recognition. Small academic journals showed interest. Colleagues who had initially dismissed her began to listen. Professor Williams would smile quietly, watching her transform from a library assistant to a respected researcher. The financial strain remained constant. Every extra penny went towards books, research materials, and Thomas's needs. Some weeks, meals were simple, clothes were second-hand, but their spirit remained unbroken. Emily taught Thomas that true wealth was not about money, but about knowledge and determination. Late one evening, as Thomas slept and research papers surrounded her, Emily realized something profound. Her journey was more than personal achievement. She was creating a path for other working-class women, showing that education and research were not restricted to privileged few. Her research was becoming a bridge between past and present, between working-class struggles and academic recognition. Each document she preserved, each story she uncovered was a small revolution. The university began to see her differently. No longer just a part-time research assistant, she was becoming a valuable contributor to local historical understanding. Her work challenged existing narratives, brought forgotten stories into light. Thomas would often ask about her work. "What story are you telling today, Mum?" he would say, eyes bright with curiosity. In those moments, Emily knew her struggle was worth every difficult step. Millbrook was changing too. Her research was slowly transforming how people understood their own history. Small exhibitions, community talks, academic presentations. Emily was becoming the voice for those who had been historically silenced. Her journey was challenging, complex, but undeniably beautiful. One document at a time, one story at a time, she was rewriting history, not just on paper but in real life. The research grant application sat on Emily's desk like a mountain of possibility. Professor Williams had recommended her, believing in her potential when others saw only limitations. The deadline was close, and every word felt like a carefully placed brick in the foundation of her dreams. Thomas watched his mother work, sensing the importance of the moment. He would bring her cups of tea, carefully prepared to avoid spilling, and sit quietly nearby. "Do you need help, Mum?" he would ask, his small hands eager to support her. The application required more than just academic language. Emily had to articulate her vision, explain how her research would contribute to understanding local historical narratives. Each sentence was a battle between academic precision and personal passion. Nights became a blur of writing and research. Her tiny kitchen transformed into a study space, with historical documents spread across the table, post-it notes marking important references. Thomas would sometimes fall asleep on the sofa, surrounded by her books, a silent witness to her determination. Professor. Williams reviewed her drafts, offering guidance but never replacing her unique voice. "This is your story," he would remind her. "Your perspective is what makes this research special." The local library became her second home. During quiet moments, between shelving books, she would work on her grant application. Colleagues noticed the change in her, a renewed energy, a spark of possibility that hadn't been there before. Financial challenges remained constant. Every penny was carefully calculated. Thomas's school shoes were mended rather than replaced. Meals were simple but nutritious. But there was no sense of lack in their home, only a feeling of hope and potential. The day the grant application was submitted felt like a small victory. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she pressed the final button. Years of interrupted dreams, of quiet struggle, seemed to converge in that single moment. Waiting became its own kind of challenge. Weeks passed, filled with hope and uncertainty. Thomas would ask about the application, his young mind not fully understanding the complexity but sensing its importance. Then came the letter, a simple envelope that arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Emily's hands shook as she opened it, Thomas watching with wide eyes. She had won the grant. The words seemed unreal at first. A research grant that would support her work, provide financial stability, and validate her academic potential. Tears came unexpectedly, a mixture of joy and years of suppressed hope. Thomas jumped with excitement, not fully understanding but sensing the magnitude of the moment. "Does this mean we can buy new books?" he asked, his practical child's mind already exploring the possibilities. The breakthrough was more than financial. It was a validation of her years of silent struggle, of late-night studying, of believing in herself when others did not. Professor Williams called to congratulate her, his voice filled with genuine pride. Her research would now focus on documenting the hidden stories of working-class women in industrial Millbrook. Each document, each story she would uncover, was a tribute to resilience and forgotten histories. The university began to see her differently. No longer just a part-time research assistant, she was becoming a respected academic voice. Colleagues who had once looked down on her now sought her insights. Emily understood that this was more than a personal victory. She was creating a path for other working-class women, showing that education and research were not restricted to privileged few. Thomas watched his mother's transformation with quiet amazement. He was learning a powerful lesson about perseverance, about turning dreams into reality, through hard work and determination. Their small flat seemed to vibrate with new possibility. The peeling wallpaper, the second-hand furniture, everything looked different now. Not because anything had physically changed, but because hope had entered every corner. One evening, as they shared a simple meal, Emily looked at Thomas. "We did this together," she said, understanding that her journey was as much about him as it was about herself. The grant was more than money. It was a key, unlocking doors that had been closed for too long. In Millbrook, where dreams often seemed as grey as the winter sky, Emily had found her light. Her personal breakthrough was just the beginning of a much larger journey. The academic conference hall buzzed with intellectual energy. Researchers from across the country had gathered, their conversations a complex tapestry of academic discussions. And there, standing confidently at the podium, was Emily Hartwell. She looked different from the nervous library assistant of years past. Confidence radiated from her, not an arrogant swagger, but a quiet, deep-rooted belief in her work. Her research on working-class women's hidden histories was about to be presented. Thomas sat in the audience, now 12 years old, watching his mother with a mixture of pride and amazement. He wore a carefully pressed shirt, borrowed from his uncle, looking more like a young gentleman than a typical pre-teen. Emily's presentation was unlike anything the conference had seen. She didn't just present dry historical facts. She told stories, stories of women who had been forgotten by history, women who had struggled, survived, and thrived in impossible circumstances. Her voice was steady, her language clear and powerful. Each word painted a picture of resilience. She spoke about her own journey, a single mother who had transformed her life through education and determination. The audience was captivated. Professors who had once looked down on her now listened with genuine respect. Her research wasn't just academic. It was a living, breathing narrative of human experience. Professor Williams sat in the front row, his eyes filled with pride. He had believed in her when no one else did. Now she was proving that potential knows no boundaries. After her presentation, something remarkable happened. Researchers approached her, not with academic condescension, but with genuine respect and curiosity. Her work had touched something deeper than mere historical documentation. The conference marked more than a personal achievement. It was a statement about possibility, about what can happen when someone refuses to be limited by circumstances. That evening, a local newspaper ran a story about her. Millbrook's own From Library Assistant to Respected Researcher, the headline read. Thomas cut out the article, carefully preserving it in a scrapbook. Her research began to create real change. Local schools started incorporating her findings into their history curriculum. Community centers invited her to speak about hidden historical narratives. She was giving voice to those who had been silenced for generations. The financial stability that came with her academic success was transformative. They moved to a better apartment. Thomas could now attend a good school. But more importantly, he was learning life's most valuable lesson, that dreams are achievable with hard work and determination. Emily never forgot her roots. She continued working part-time at the library, understanding the importance of staying connected to her community. Her success wasn't about leaving her past behind, but about lifting others as she climbed. Young women in Millbrook began to see her as an inspiration. Single mothers, working students, those who had been told their dreams were impossible, they saw Emily's journey and found hope. Her research extended beyond academic circles. Local community groups began documenting their own histories, inspired by her work. She had started a quiet revolution of remembrance and recognition. Thomas was changing too. Inspired by his mother's journey, he developed a keen interest in history and social studies. He understood that education was more than just academic achievement. It was a tool for understanding and changing the world. At home, their conversations became deeper. Emily would share stories from her research, and Thomas would ask profound questions. Their relationship had transformed from a traditional mother-child dynamic to a partnership of mutual learning and respect. The university offered her a full-time research position. But Emily was strategic. She negotiated terms that allowed her flexibility, understanding the importance of maintaining her connection with the community. Her story spread beyond Millbrook. Other universities invited her to speak, to share her unique approach to historical research. She became a symbol of resilience, of the power of persistent dreaming. Years of struggle had not broken her spirit. Instead, they had refined her, like a precious metal tempered by fire. Her journey proved that limitations are often just perceptions waiting to be challenged. As the sun set on another remarkable day, Emily looked at Thomas. "We did this together," she said, echoing words she had spoken years ago. But now, those words carried the weight of achieved dreams, of a journey beautifully completed. In Millbrook, where dreams once seemed as distant as the horizon, Emily Hartwell had rewritten the narrative of possibility.